Hi everyone, Meredith here, your instructor for the course. I just wanted to hop on with a quick video containing a couple things, ranging from my initial reaction to some of what you all have shared over the past couple weeks, talking a little bit about video content and some updates and addendums since this course was created, and then finally sharing a little bit, since you all had to share this as well, about myself and my relationship with social media. So first of all, let's talk about some of the through lines that I was noticing in your week one content, in particular, talking about your relationship to social media and what that looks like and what it might mean for us as people who are thinking about how to create content and how to create content for brands, specifically, which is different, right, than creating content as an individual. So something that I noticed, and I notice this every quarter, but I think it's still really worth noting, is the focus on authenticity. How many of you were like, I don't like live videos. I don't like things that are clearly just trying to sell me a product. Um, I think that's a really pretty universal impulse. And why I bring it up is that I think it speaks to something that's really kind of a fundamental truth about what it looks like to engage on social media as a brand, which is that you're walking a tightrope as a brand. You're walking a tightrope between, on one hand, you're there to promote your product, you're there to raise awareness about your brand, you're there to cultivate a connection between your brand and the public. You as a user, you as a person, you're probably there to get entertained. You're probably there to be distracted. Maybe you're there to learn something. Maybe you're there to engage with one of your hobbies. That's a very different mindset, right? And so I think something that I'd encourage all of you to keep in mind as you create content, but particularly as you think about what you might want to include in your final portfolio, is this tension that social media managers are kind of constantly navigating between, on the one hand, promoting their product, and on the other hand, engaging with users, between, on the one hand, producing content that's entertaining or silly or on trend, and on the other hand, producing content that really has something to say, whether it's about the technical side of a hobby, whether it's about what a product is and what a product does. So entertain versus engage, I think is another, or sorry, entertain versus educate is another duality that I think we as social media managers really have to think about and reckon with. And it's always going to be a little bit of both, right? It's always going to be striking a balance. So that's something I'd encourage you to think about as you curate your own content for your final portfolio, but also as you're looking at your brands on social media, and notice kind of, okay, how are they like going back and forth? Are they skewing to one side or the other of entertain versus educate, promote versus engage? Because I think there's a lot of ways to do it successfully. A little bit about short form video this week. This course was created just after TikTok really became a big thing. And as you all have experienced firsthand, TikTok has really revolutionized the way that we engage with social media. The most obvious example, of course, is that like ubiquitous short form video. Something that really strikes me about social media is how easy it is to forget that I just say, and I don't even know anymore, say 4 years ago, 5 years ago, Instagram was not a video app. And now it is. And now YouTube is a short form video app. Instagram is a short form video app. You see other platforms like LinkedIn try to become and not really succeed at becoming a short form video app. So I think TikTok has really changed the game in that way. But I think there's another way that it's changed the game, and that's in how people um, engage with their feeds. It's easy to forget, but there was a time, and I think many of you will remember this. This was certainly when I was coming of age as a social media user, that when you logged onto social media, it was mostly people you knew. Your feed was all people that you had chosen to follow. Your feed had an end to it. All of that's changed, and that much of that predates TikTok, but I think TikTok really accelerated that change and made us go from, okay, I'm consuming a set list of channels that I have opted into, to I'm exploring a broader kind of content ecosystem. The algorithm is determining what I see. And I think that last point about the algorithm is part of why it's so important as a social media like brand manager to think about like how am I taking advantage of trends? How am I taking advantage of content that the algorithm is already kind of favoring and pushing out to people? And that's where trends can really be helpful. And of course, as many of you noted in your introductions, trends can be done poorly. Trends can be done in ways that seem out of touch or seem overly promotional. But the reason they're there is to engage with the algorithm by and large. And so I think that's something important to keep in mind, especially as we head into this week with Video Week. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about the technical side of Video Week. You'll see in the lecture video and the material a lot of different ways that you could create video. I encourage you to use whatever you're comfortable with, but I also really encourage you, especially if you're working with a brand that's really active on TikTok and really is able to speak the language of that platform, to look at CapCut. For those of you who don't know, CapCut is TikTok's built-in video editor. And the real advantage that CapCut offers is it offers templates. And it lets you see how many people have used this template, how are they using it. And that I think is a really good shortcut, especially if you're imagining yourself as someone who's a brand manager who has limited time. Those templates are a really good shortcut to staying on trend, to staying on brand, and to hopefully reaching new people through the algorithm. I will confess that my own understanding of how to use CapCut is I'm a total novice at it. There's definitely a learning curve. I'm going to post some materials in this announcement that might help you if you want to learn how to use it. But I really encourage you to use this class as a chance to experiment. It doesn't have to be polished. It can be messy. I'd rather you experiment with something that's maybe new to you and a tool that's new to you and come up with a video that's a little messy but is interesting, than come up with like a really polished video that maybe doesn't speak to the trends as well or doesn't speak to the platform as well. So yeah, TLDR, really encourage you to give CapCut a try, particularly if you're thinking about TikTok as a platform where a lot of your brand's audience is. With that, I wanted to also just share a little bit about myself and my own relationship to social media, since I've heard from you all about your relationships with it. I'm a millennial. I remember getting Facebook when I was in high school. You can do the math there. But I think the biggest thing that I've noticed over kind of the time that I've been on social media and how my own relationship to it has evolved is that now I think there's just so much more content that social media feels a lot less like kind of a place where I go to maintain my relationships and more like a place where I go to learn new things or to be inspired or to discover new things. I think, like a lot of you mentioned, there's this tension as a user of social media between, on one hand, being like, wow, there's so much creativity happening here. And I really believe that. And oh my God, I'm wasting so much time on this. And I think that's really true too. I think that's something that I have certainly dealt with in my relationship with social media, particularly as I've experienced the rise of algorithms, the rise of the infinite scroll, which again, we forget really easily. Infinite scroll is not a feature that was present on Instagram in, say, like 2016. Even 2018, possibly. And we have a really short memory with how these apps have changed. So I think there's not really a good answer to that question of like how do you balance the scale between like being engaged and being inspired on one hand and having a life on the other and not getting all your time sucked up by these apps. Um, but I think these are really interesting questions to keep asking ourselves. So with that, a couple housekeeping notes. You all should see comments from me on your final project proposals. Don't hesitate to open up the conversation about those if you have further questions, further ideas, specific things that you want feedback on. Speaking of feedback, I'm going to catch up with all of the great content y'all have done in visual and written form. I've already taken a look at some of that and it looks really spot on and I'm excited to see more. Again, you will not get specific feedback from me on that content unless you didn't really get any from your peers, in which case I really want to make sure that everyone gets actionable feedback that they can use, particularly as we look ahead to some of these revision assignments that are coming up. That said, if you would like more feedback, if you want to talk over decisions that you made with me, if you're like, hey, I want to do this as a video, but I'm not sure how it will work, or I tried this in my written content, do you think it worked? Please don't hesitate to reach out. I'm always happy to give more specific feedback, particularly if you can tell me a little bit more about what your intention was, about what you're looking for. So with that in mind, again, just kind of expect to see me popping into those discussion boards as you create content. And I really look forward to seeing what everyone creates this week for video content. Finally, happy Halloween. Be safe. Enjoy the day. And I'll talk to you all later.